the question is, if you had to guess what one issue came up the most in our discussions, what would that be? You know, while we are doing this, and while all of these different issues are scrolling, it just reemphasizes to me how many issues young people are dealing with in today's society, and how complex they are. We are going to introduce our next two presenters. One of them is very impressive. One of them is not as impressive, but a wonderful person just the same. So the first person I want to introduce is Dr. Julie Balaban. Dr. Balaban leads the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth Hitchcock Child and Adolescent Psychiatric team and serves as an assistant professor of psychiatry and pediatrics section of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at the Geisel School of Medicine at Dartmouth. I want to tell you, I spoke to this person, and just on a very quick, like 2 seconds, she gave me a diagnosis of the other guy that's coming up, and she'll share that with you when she gets up here. This other person that's going to come up is my dear friend and brother and sometimes stunt double, Jon Delano. Jon is Jon. Both of your fans are here. Jon is the Associate Special Agent in charge of the New England Field Division of the U.S. Department of Justice, Departments of Drug Enforcement Administration. Jon is a member of the Department of Justice Senior Executive Service and currently serves as a Associated Special Agent in charge. This is a lot of stuff, Jon. You're really special. I see the word special a lot. Associated Special Agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, New England Field Office. I want to just say something else about Jon. So, you know, as young people, a lot of people are probably thinking about, what am I going to do with my life, and what am I going to do for a career, and, you know, what am I going to do to make the world a better place? Hopefully that's what you're thinking about. So this guy, you know, I don't know, do you have hours? You don't punch a clock, huh? It's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week job. Jon is out there on the front lines, not only investigating and apprehending some really, really bad and dangerous people that are flooding our streets with things like fentanyl, that one little granula can kill you, but he's also out educating children, right? Or young people, I'm sorry, you're not children anymore, you're young people, right? And like, people know who he is in this room, right? That means something to me, and that there's a real relationship, and he knows their names, and that's critical. So I'm proud to call you my friend, my brother. I'm trying to say as many nice things as I can. Please slip me that 100 as I walk by now. But at this point, you guys are going to be allowed to ask questions. Okay, we remember when we were in like the 3rd grade and they told us there was no such thing as a dumb question, only the one that wasn't asked. Okay, now my other understanding is that you can ask some of those questions on the website that we gave you. If you are shy and you're not comfortable standing in front of a crowd, that's okay, that's cool, we get it. But you will be able to ask those questions online. So please take advantage of the opportunity. Thank you, and here comes a couple of smart people.
All right, so hello everybody. I'm in charge of housekeeping, and Jon's gonna get to do the fun stuff with you guys.
Awesome, awesome.
As you all know, because you participated, we had groups this morning, and this time period is for the groups to be reporting out so that you can summarize what was covered for the people who weren't able to attend your group. So I think that there may be some groups that didn't identify a faculty person and a student to be the ones to report out for the 3 groups that covered your topic. So if you haven't, please use this time to do so. And we're going to start with the first topic this morning, which was mental health and substance use disorder. And our faculty person is Lorene Zamudo, and our student is Quincy Roy. And if you would please come up and take a few minutes to report out.
Basically, I was put into the first group, all the way on that side of the wall, and it was about substance abuse. So substance abuse is something that I actually work with a lot. I'm part of a coalition called Making It Happen. I've been with them for 3 years. And so being here today was really important for me because I got to hear what all of you guys had to say. And you guys being here also meant a lot to me because it meant that you guys want to put forth your opinions and make a change for your communities. And that's really great. So something that we talked about was asking why people are using drugs. Because, you know, there's so many things that are going on in each teenager's individual lives. You know, whether it's at home, whether it's at school, whatever the case, there's always a reason why, whether it's peer pressure. There's so many different aspects. Something that we ended up talking about was, you know, when you're using these drugs, what would be a way to not punish the person who's using them, because there's usually a reason why, and you know, sometimes they just got a bad luck, you know. So we talked about how not just suspending and enforcing them to go home to a place where they can still use and abuse, but instead have an in-school type of detention or suspension where they can still get their work done, but not be at home and not be in a, you know, environment where they can still use these drugs and continue to harm themselves. Another thing that could be backed up with the in-school suspension would be extra courses with an SAP or a guidance counselor so they can also help the students who are in need. This also kind of goes with not, you know, treating them poorly, not, you know, making them feel worse about themselves, because, you know, that can really drag a person down and continue the use of, you know, drugs. Something that I definitely think is important is the need for peer support. Every single one of you are a teenager. And, well, not the adults, but every single one of the youth who are here are teenagers, and you're in high school, and you're facing, you know, peer pressure and going through your own things, you know? And the need for peer support is very important. I think that having an outreach program where peers can talk to other peers would be very important, because it wouldn't be a lecture from a higher up, but instead it would be a dynamic conversation with these other people who need their help, who need the support from their friends. And the last thing that I think is very important is that a lot of times teachers don't know how to, you know, take action. They don't know how to or what to say exactly. So educating the teachers and the faculty at each and every one of our schools would be very important, because then they can know how to interact with these students who need the extra help, and instead of just punishing, they can, you know, guide them in a positive direction where they can get the help that they need, whether it's through peer support or through conversations with guidance counselors or SAPs. So that's a broad example of some of the things that we talked about that I think are important, and the people who are in my group also agreed were important.
Sounds like an incredible group, Quince.
Thank you.
And it's for me personally, having known Quincy now for a few years, to see her be able to get up here in front of an audience like this and to watch you as you were interacting with your group back there is so rewarding for me. It's so incredible to see that, and I know something that my brother Jim talks about all the time is to create an army of youth that are really going to go out there and help us push all of these issues back. And you know, from somebody who is a DEA agent and an enforcement world that I come from, I fully recognize that it's going to take an army of youth to help us win this battle right now. To see a group and to hear what you guys pushed out, to me, was just incredible. So good job.
Thank you.
Good job. Doc?
We do have time for one or two quick questions or comments.
Oh,
If
you
anybody
gotta stay up here in
wants
case
to,
we
you
have
can
questions.
get to the microphone.
So a lot of the, one of the things I brought up in that group was, which she mentioned, like how criminalized these people get when they seek help. It's like when they go and tell someone, like a psychologist or somebody, or I don't really know who helps these kind of people, but when they go to ask for help, a lot of times they'll just be convicted as a criminal for possessing illegal substances, and that's just not going to help them. I mean, when it comes to drugs, getting rid of the supply will not get rid of the demand. And so if you cut off their supply like that, they are still going to want the drugs. And when they get out of prison or whatever, wherever you put them, they're still going to just go back to what they were doing, because they haven't really gotten over it. They've just been cut off. And that's always been like an important point of view I've had. Just people need to be able to ask help for this kind of stuff without consequences, because if you can't ask for help without getting punished for it, then what's the point of asking for help?
I just wanted to respond to that. You're so brave for mentioning that, and I'm so impressed with all of the kids that we've interacted with today. You guys are unbelievable. I also want to make sure that you all are aware there are laws in the state that permit adolescents to seek substance use treatment on their own, confidentially, with or without their parents' consent. And that's really important for you to know. So if you feel that you're not getting the support in school or at home or anywhere else for that matter, there are agencies all over the state that are working to try and be more accessible to you all and to make sure that you have the resources you need to get the help that you need. And that is completely non-punitive. And the residential treatment center that Governor Sununu mentioned this morning, I'm the executive director of that program. We treat kids 24 hours a day, take them into our program 24 hours a day, some of which come independent of their families. So we will all work much harder to make sure that you guys have access to these resources and that you have the support that you need.
I also think it's fair to mention, and I heard in your original presentation, and I think what you were trying to say was we don't want to stigmatize those people. And I think here in New Hampshire especially, and New Hampshire tends to be the model for the rest of the country. Everything we're doing here, really and truly, the rest of the country is trying to figure out how we're doing so much in New Hampshire. But we see things like a DEA agent, maybe a police officer, and a young person in recovery coming together and speaking at a school. You know, these are things that in the past never really happened. You know, so we all have recognized how important it is not to stigmatize that user. And by joining forces together and having a collective voice, I think we've come so much further than ever before. Thank you, guys. Great job. Thank you.
For the self-harm, depression, and suicide, we have Debbie Baird and Adrienne Delamere.
Hi everyone, I'm a junior at Pinkerton Academy. My name's Adrienne. And first off, I wanted to thank everyone that I had in my group for participating and being awesome today. So thank you so much for that. So I work a lot with NAMI. I'm trained in suicide prevention, trained in bullying prevention, and I am a serious activist for all of these things. So this is very important to me, so thank you all for coming so much. So the top 3 things that we saw today, that kids mentioned, that kids want more ability to access and see, is they want more access to resources in school and outside of school. I come from a town of my graduating middle school class was only 98 kids. Only 98. Now I go to a school and my grade is 1,010 kids. So, seeing that I grew up in a small town, I know that there is a lack of resources in schools in that small town. I relate to you guys on that level. And so what kids want to see, what kids want to hear is teachers being able to relate to them, is teachers being able to, if they don't feel comfortable with a teacher, being able to go and get them other help from other people. The second thing that we saw most kids wanted was more peer support. Hi, I'm here, I'm up here, I'm a kid, I love to talk, if you can't tell. I'm all about helping kids. Like, I love my peers. Even if I don't know you, come talk to me. Peer support is so important. It is so important to build that relationship, to build these relationships in your school. That way, everyone has a supportive community. Having a supportive community is so important. It creates leaps and bounds of support for everyone else. You may not know the kid sitting next to you in your chemistry class, but hey, they might be having a hard time. Reach out and ask if they're okay. It's important. The third top thing we saw was need for more education, teachers, parents, and students. The thing that I like to bring up a lot is that sometimes teachers who work with kids aren't as educated as they need to be. No offense. But what we are seeing is that kids are struggling to get the help they need, and they might not have a supportive friend group, and they might not have a supportive friend or family, but at school, that's the place where you should be reaching out. That's the place where you should be outgoing, and if you can't get that help, there's an issue, and the stigma needs to be broken against that. So kids, if you need to reach out to someone, you need to start activating that help in your school. You need to start progressing in that manner, and that's why it's so important to build that, because everywhere you go, you should feel supported and safe when it comes to mental health and self-harm. One more thing I wanted to mention was that we talked a lot about self-harm in my group, and we talked a lot about how self-harm affects your brain and how it affects the people around you, because there is so much stigma against it. There's so much judgment around it. And because of that, people don't talk about it, and they feel awkward and self-conscious and afraid. But I'm here to tell you, you're human. And you, if that is what you're gonna do, no, it's not an option. Know that you have me, I guarantee you, most of the adults in this room are peer supporters. Most of the peers in this room are here because they wanted to learn about supporting other students. So look at the person next to you. Know that they're your support group. You just made a new friend. Thank you, guys.
Great job.
Back to the eating disorders.
Hello, my name is Aaron Silvestri. I go to Goffstown High School, and I'm a sophomore, and our issue that we talked about was eating disorders. So some main issues that we saw talking about eating disorders was body image and how we look at how people feel about eating disorders. It was a big problem that I noticed that people don't really recognize or talk about eating disorders that much, and that it was one of those things that if you don't have it, you don't talk about it, and if your friend has it, and then you don't know how to communicate well with them. So that was a huge problem that arose with basically eating disorders. It was a big problem to know that if I have an eating disorder, my friends don't know how to take care of me in a sense, that I'm not sure where to go. So that was a big problem that I saw. That there needs to be a lot more resources and help to help people with these problems. If it's overeating or not eating enough, that's what it is. So it's hard to ask for help, and that was the main issue right there. So there's also pressure on personal appearance and body image. We all go on social media, we all go on Instagram, and we all go on social media, and this correlates so well with eating disorders, because we all look at ourselves and think, I'm not good enough. I need to eat less, or I need to eat more, I need to be more fit. But it's all on what you think is perfect, and everyone has a different idea on what is perfect. And I commend those people that stood up and talked in front of my whole group, because it took a lot. And I was really happy with my group. I'm looking at the faces over here to my left. And this person did an amazing job in talking. She was great. She was happy with what she had to speak about. She knew what she was speaking about. And that's what matters. That just because you may or may not have an eating disorder and you may or may not like your body, you know who you are, you know what's special to you. And we also talked about how sports, dance, any extracurriculars, how people look at us, our body image, that's what people look on. That's what we think people look on. That we think people look only on our features from the outside. That we don't look at our features that are inside. And that's how it correlates to body image. That we may think that I'm not big enough or I'm not small enough, but we are. Thank you.
Aaron, that was great, Aaron. And while we wait to see if there's any questions, I just want to jump in and say, you know, it doesn't really matter what the topic is. The thing that I keep seeing throughout the day is that our youth want to get involved with it. They want to be able to get better and educate themselves so that they can possibly help one of their friends or a classmate or whatever it would be. And to me, that's just absolutely incredible that they're willing to do that, to educate themselves on a topic that may not affect them personally so they can help out somebody else. Do you have a question?
So in one of the groups that I was in about like eating disorders, someone brought to the attention that it was mainly like targeted towards females, where like if people think about eating disorders, it's mainly like a female issue, and that's not necessarily true. And we had a therapist in our group who actually works with like people who have eating disorders, and brought it to our attention that 40% of people who have eating disorders are male. So one of the questions that were posed in my group was how can we make it more prominent for people who don't necessarily know a lot about eating disorders, to know that it's not just like a one gender issue, that males really struggle with this too, and like so that people can know that it's okay to reach out, and we have more people coming up to talk about this issue, like coming to like work with their issues, knowing that it's okay to get help, even no matter what gender you are.
Question, what's your name?
Austin.
Thank you, Austin.
I think that's an incredible point that Austin made. I don't think there's a topic that anybody talked about today that really is gender specific, that we can tie to any group at all. So bringing these things to light and just continuing to educate people around us about it is really what it's all about. I thought you guys did great.
Thank you. I would like to say that our group also brought up that point about how in the social media, in ads, we mostly see we're getting better at seeing plus size and how it's mostly women, but how it's also men. And how men might not have the biggest body, or we might have smaller body, and that's still okay.
I just kind of had a comment because you're talking about eating disorders, and someone that I'm very close to actually has an eating disorder, and I've seen how it affected them, and I went to the hospitals and saw how crazy it was. And just walking into those hospitals and stuff like that is like really weird, you know? But something that I also found that was interesting, because I was part of the substance abuse section, so this person that I'm very close to actually uses nicotine as a way to make herself like look skinnier, because you know it causes you not to want to eat as much. And I think that that's crazy, and I've been trying to encourage them, you know, not to, you know, lean towards that, you know, because they're hurting their body in two ways now. They're not eating, and they're also, you know, using and abusing nicotine because their brain has told them, you know, don't eat. This is a way to not get those hunger urges. And I think that that's pretty crazy. And I just thought that it was something to bring up.
One of the things that we talked about in our group that I didn't mention that I really should have is, and I also saw this as a really common theme in all my groups, is that education at a young level shows us what we are and what we choose to be when we grow up. So it is the education on that eating healthily at a young age is good. And not to avoid those comments saying, hey, you look a little bit small, or you need to eat more. You look a bit thin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
So for diversity, respect, and gender and sexuality, we have Kathleen Blood and Tristan.
Okay, I'm Tristan. I did the genders and sexuality. And believe it or not, we did not just introduce that at all. So in our top three themes, and from each session, we had reducing stigmas, to look at a whole person instead of their sexuality is presenting them, change the culture in school, and educate on acceptances that people are different, such as masculine and feminine ideals. And it was very interesting to talk about because we had some interesting subjects that we touched on that I don't hear talked about often, and it was very cool to talk about with people who understand and just know what you're going through and understand what people are talking about, and it was spectacular, to say the least. And it was very inspiring to hear what some people were saying, especially when it came to like people talking about how they felt about gender-neutral bathrooms, and just how they felt that they couldn't talk about how they felt because they couldn't talk about how they felt about their bodies because they were going through things that they couldn't understand at the point in time, and so on. And it was beautiful and amazing, and I can't thank people enough for talking about it, but it was just awesome, and I thank everyone who had the time to talk to me and my friends and everyone else that has been going through times like this, and it was amazing. Anything you'd like to add?
You nailed it, as per usual.
Do we have any questions, comments?
We
have one.
Behind. They want us to
Oh, okay, okay. We're going to hold the questions to the end, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. We just
Awesome.
wanna make
Thank
sure
you so
everyone
much.
has a chance, and then we can come back to questions. So for race and ethnicity, we have Pedro and Aaron.
So, hi, my name's Aaron. I'm from Galveston High School. I'm back, no. Okay, so one thing that we talked about a lot, yet again, was education from a young age. A great deal was, an example that I'll share is that in my school, until last year, I've had my first ethnic teacher. She is Asian, and we talked about how, since that point, I've only had Caucasian teachers. And how growing up without these teachers that look different, and have different values, affects how we grow up and how we bring our ideas into life. So, race and ethnicity is a hard topic to talk about. It's ooey gooey and no one wants to talk about it, but it's so healthy. And I believe it is positive that the people that don't know and that aren't ethnic, even though we all have a huge background, to talk about it, because we all have our own backgrounds. We all do. It's not fair enough to say that the people that just look different have their own. It is the white people too. You guys have a background, and it's still open for you guys to talk, even though you guys may feel awkward that there's a stigma. But it is good to talk about the problems that we're having today. That the problem is that we're afraid to talk about the solutions. I was hearing in my group that some students heard the N-word multiple times a day in their school, and I'm just not up for that. I'm Mexican American, and I always hear jokes about the border, about Trump, and I'm sick of it. I try to laugh it off, but it's hard once you hear it once or twice a day. And I see some people in the crowd shaking their heads, and it's very important to talk about how those are the problems. They're the microaggressions that people have towards each other. So we all know that there's a lack of diversity in New Hampshire, and even though we may not have a big burst of racial people here, we could still talk about it because we all know that every day is a new day, and there's always going to be new people coming to New Hampshire, and I'm willing to bet that there's going to be a lot of more ethnic people down here in New Hampshire one day. And we need to educate the young ones, us, the youth, the little kids, how to deal with these so-called problems that we can fix if we just talk about them, if we have open conversations that aren't awkward.
It's excellent. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks. We're going to wait to take questions at the end. That's what we want to do. Thanks.
Did the bullying group identify? Is DeLena here?
We had very interesting conversations with our groups about just the need for more common respect of one another and the differences. There was we did an icebreaker at the beginning that looked at just groupings by random categories, and then we realized that we have these random labels on people and treat them according to those labels, and how important it is to treat each other with respect, just for where people are coming from. Certainly, having more trusted adults in the building that people can lean on was one of the things that came out. Looking at enforcing the policies around bullying more, especially around social media and how that spills into the school. Even just educating the students about the definition of bullying, because I think there are so many different degrees of bullying that we need to stop it at a much earlier phase and really promote that respect. So that's about it.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, and then the third section was our timely topics, and the first one was school violence.
School violence isn't necessarily just school shootings, and that's part of the stigma against it. So things like Parkland happen, but suicide is also school violence. Anything that is considered hurting someone, hurting yourself, or anything of the matter is considered school violence if it happens in a school. So some of the things that lead up to that definitely are inclusion. People are bullied all the time, like every day. In fact, it's like, I think it's 1 out of 5 was the statistic, but also 1 out of 10 of those bullied people end up either hurting themselves, hurting another person, or threatening to do so. And it was because they were isolated, but they didn't have a choice. It was because no one wanted to talk to them because they were the weird kid, or the kid who didn't do drugs and drink, or the kid who didn't party, because that's what's cool. None of those things are cool. If you don't do any of those things, honestly, you're probably cooler than them. But stuff like that, and also social media, huge role in school violence. Like, if you think about it, maybe half of us don't use social media the way we should. Social media should be used to project our ideas as teens, to let people know what we think is important, to use it as a way of communication to understand others, but instead it's being used in a negative way to affect people, to hurt people, to communicate ideas of violence without meaning to. And so that's another part of the stigma that needs to be crumbled and thrown out. Like, it's not even relevant anymore. The third thing that we talked about, in my group especially, was bystander. So I hope all of you know what a bystander is, but it's the person that kind of encourages it a little bit, but they don't really know where they stand. And these people, you can do something. You can be a good bystander, you can be a bad one. The bad one won't say anything, but the good one will say something. And I'm here to tell you that even if you are a bystander and you don't get involved, that's okay. If you don't feel comfortable getting involved, if you don't feel comfortable going public that you think something's wrong, that you think something's going to happen to your school, that's okay. Your guidance counselors have to hold confidentiality. That's a promise they make you. So go to your guidance counselor, tell them what you think, and even if you're wrong, you still could have prevented something. So that's a big deal, and people need to start thinking about that. Start thinking about what you can do to help your community. And also, one other thing I'd like to add is everyone says see something, say something, but how many of you say something? Very little, right? Or some? Because we're uncomfortable about it. And that's okay, but try to get a little more comfortable because it's time to do something. The other thing I wanted to mention was, and I want teachers to take serious note of this, by a raise of hands, show me how many of you feel comfortable and safe in school every single day. That's less than half. So by seeing that, what do we do about it? We start stuff, we start talking about it, and that's why that part of today was so important, so that the adults in the room could see, hey, not all these kids feel safe. What are we going to do about it? But as kids, we have to start talking about it to make it more relevant.
Thank you. Thanks again.
So the next topic is pressure for success, and I could, if I have to, personally lean on any of the three faculty people because I know them well, but hopefully one of you has agreed to be the faculty backup.
I'm Heather, senior, Goshen High School. So we talked about pressure for success, and we mostly talked about how there's a lot of different kinds of pressure and how you can kind of handle it. And one of the first things that we did talk about was the definition of success, because everyone has a different term. Everyone thinks of it a different way. Some people think it's grades, some people think of it as money, some people think of it as having a happy life. And I think that if everyone kind of changes their viewpoint of how everyone else views success, that we can kind of change, the idea of like judging people. And then we talked about stress a lot and trying to balance life. And one of the coping mechanisms that my group came up with was something that my school has, which is a student resource center. And you can go there and just say, hey, I'm stressed, or can you help me organize my binder? And we have people from NHS that are there to help you with tutoring, or even organizing your binder, or helping you prioritize things. And they're always there for you every day, every period of the day. So we just think that we should really teach those coping skills, or make it more public that those are there, because a lot of times there's that idea of going to get help means you need a tutor, but you can get help in any sort of way. We talked about trying to encourage like your siblings, because a lot of times you can get stressed trying to compare yourself to other people, whether it's family or friends, and that when you're trying to constantly compare yourself, you're not really following your own path for success. We talked about getting from point A to point B in your life, and how it's not going to be a smooth line. It's not one morning you're in point A, next morning you're in point B. Like, there's always going to be bumps, there's going to be things you hit on the way, and how there's many ways to cope with how to handle those stressors. We talked about people underestimating yourself and really trying to pick yourself up. One of my favorite things was someone said that we should have comfort in the unknown, and that we need to focus on what we can control and not to worry about what we can't control. And then also the idea of flexibility, being flexible with what's going to happen, whether it's school, whether it's college, whether it's a career, whether it's sport. Like, you just have to be flexible, knowing that sometimes something changes, and to be okay with that and realize that that change was almost necessary to get to point B.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for coming up.
And our last group is road trip. So if some representatives from that group could come up, that would be awesome. And then we will have time for you to do some discussion.
Excellent.
All right, so my name is Bryson Walker. I'm from Winnicott High School. I'm a senior, three-sport athlete. So coming here, I'm not really like a student leader, perhaps. I'm in a club, but I'm not like the president or anything. Like, there are a lot of people here. Like, I appreciate like all of you coming out and just talking about these things, because not a lot of people are out here trying to like talk about like mental health. Like, a lot of people want to ignore it, but the real thing is that we have to talk about it in order for it to get better. So the topic that I'm talking about, so we have the road trip, so that was third session, what we're talking about. And it's about driving under the influence and about just driving and impaired driving. So the first thing is texting and driving is not safe. A lot of people, the reason people think it's safe is because people do it all the time. Like, you sometimes will be driving with your friends and maybe they'll pick up their phone and maybe you just won't say anything because you're like, oh, it's pretty normal. Like, it was just like this one real quick text. But that one real quick text, not all the time, but someday something will happen. And a lot of people are like, oh, it won't happen to me, but it will happen to you. It has happened. Like, there are people that have lost their lives because they're like, oh, it won't be me that's gonna like crash into a tree, or it won't be me that gets like ran off the road because I'm not paying attention, or it won't be me because like killing all your friends in a car crash. Like no one wants that to happen. And the best way to prevent that is to like look at your friends and be like, hey, don't get on your phone while you're driving, all right? Don't do this, don't do that. Like say something. Don't just be like, oh, like it's just like a cool thing to be on your phone. It's not cool. Like maybe like if you're changing your music, like if you're stopped, like that's okay. But if you're driving and you look at your phone, you're not putting yourself in danger. You're not only putting yourself in danger, you're putting everyone around you at risk. Even like other people that are driving, not even that are in your car making that decision. People that are going about their daily lives, if there's a pedestrian and you're looking at your phone and you hit them, they did nothing wrong and they lost their life because you made a stupid decision. So another thing is you need to consider the consequences of your actions. When you make those choices, it's not just you. It's like, oh, me looking at my phone, like nothing's gonna happen to me, but something could happen to someone else. Like you're on your phone just driving and you hit someone, or you hit someone's dog even, or if you hit a piece of property, how is that gonna affect someone else? You have to think about all these different decisions that are gonna affect people around you and the community around you and how you can make other people and influence their lives. You can make their lives better or worse. So you just have to think about that every day when you're out there. Like even small things, like just don't check your phone randomly. And educating peers on what are good behaviors, that's a big thing. Like the social stigma that like being on your phone is just like a normal thing while you're driving, or even like when you're crossing the road, at least like not even driving when other people are driving, it's a big thing. You just want to go up this like to people and say, hey, don't do that, because if you don't feel comfortable with it, they won't do it. And if you're with your friends and you say, hey, don't be on your phone, and they're still on your phone, just find some of your friends. They're putting your life in danger. It might not seem like a big thing, but I know people who have lost their friends to these kinds of incidents. So yeah, that's my speech.
That's awesome. Hold on, what's your name?
Bryson Walker.
One thing I just want to help out Bryson with that I think you got wrong was you are a student leader. It's the first thing he said was he wasn't a student leader. Every young person in here is a student leader. Every one of you, yeah. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Hey, thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, man.
Are you going to say something? No. Yeah, so let's go.
So we have 10 minutes, and we knew that we held some questions. So if we can maybe engage those questions now, if you'd like to line up and ask some questions.
What I want to do is have these same kind of conversations just like in everyday life with my friends, like at a lunch table.
Yeah.
So how would we do that without seeming weird and being like, why do you want to talk about that? That's such a weird thing, Nick. I'm trying to eat lunch.
I'm going to let the doctor answer a professional response, but I'm going to tell you my answer, which is you started that today. So by being able to come here today and have these conversations with people, for the most part, you probably don't even know. You know, that's probably the most difficult time of it all. But you have to carry the message forward. You know, we asked some young people a long time ago, Jim Wahlberg and I, about 2 years ago, to be upstanders and not bystanders. To be part of the solution and not just stand by and watch what happens as the world passes us by. So the challenge to you is to leave here today. You've already answered your own question. Leave here today and take those conversations back and have those conversations and figure out a way to do it. We have a bunch of student leaders in here who are going to go back into your schools, your communities, your sports organizations, your faith-based organizations, whatever it is, and carry the message forward. You want to add to that, Doc?
Yeah, one way is simple is to say, hey, I was at this conference and there's some interesting topics that came up. But I would say the whole point of this conference is not to ask us, because you guys are the experts on you guys. So on your bus ride home, I think if people on your bus could share that question with you and figure out how do we bring this back to school and how do we take a role that can be uncomfortable sometimes, that would be awesome.
Great question. How about over here?
So I was in the group of gender and sexuality, and one thing that came up in my group was like teaching students about gender dysphoria and like different like transgender like genders, like non-binary and stuff, and like would that be like a possibility? Like could there be some sort of curriculum that includes that?
Oh yeah.
Can that happen, please?
I think you need to talk with your school about incorporating it into, well, I heard people don't do health class anymore. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So it's a thing.
I teach phys ed too, but I'm in the health classroom a lot more, and this is where I really want to put all my time with my students. However, I can't. So I'm hearing from all of you that these are really important topics. New Hampshire, you have one health class out of your 4 years of high school, one semester. but these are so important and should be recognized every year of high school, middle school, elementary. How do we do that? How do we go about that? And I think it's a lot of your voices saying you need this. You need to promote this so there can be more time. I think you're at a perfect, I think this is a perfect start. But I think, like you said, these are topics that should be included into the curriculum. Just going about it and finding out how we can implement it and make the time for all of this.
Excellent point. Thank you so much. Thank you. How about over here?
My question is for pressure for success. I really liked the idea of having a student support system. I think that is amazing that that's an opportunity for people who are having a hard time to go and be a part of. Does that include, like, is there counseling in there, like right then, to help people stop whatever kind of, it might be a breakdown, meltdown, whatever is happening right then?
What our student resource center is, it's kind of like a different version of like the library, but there's no like books. There's like computers, but you can work in there with your groups. There's not necessarily like counseling per se, but there's teachers in there, and we have specific like, I don't know the technical term for what her position is in the school, but she's kind of like an assistant to students. She's a wonderful lady, and if you just need someone to talk to specifically about your school problems, she will definitely talk to you. And then like also the NHS members, I'm an NHS member myself, and I would be willing to help anyone with what they need. But a lot of times if you're having like that kind of stressor, you would go to your school guidance counselor or your SAP. But I know that at least at our school, the teachers in the Student Resource Center would love to help out with that.
So my question would also be on the gender and sexuality side. I think there needs to be more like education on how, like if you have someone you know that's going through something like that, like my brother came out to me as gay, and he's very nervous to tell my parents. He's had a lot of backlash in the school environment. He's had friends who no longer want to be his friend. And I guess on my standpoint, like, he has a hard time opening up, and my question would be like, how do you help someone that's going through that? Because obviously, I mean, I'm his sister, and I have all the love in the world for him, and I don't like that he's going through this. So I think, what do you do when somebody's struggling and they don't reach out to you, but you know that they need help with something like that?
So that was kind of a common theme across a lot of the groups, was how do you help somebody, whatever the issue is. And maybe some of the other students could come up and speak to that piece as well. But I would say that I think being there is 90% of it, and speaking up, as a lot of people have said, make the effort and speak out, and identifying in some way. You might say something to your brother or somebody in that position. I feel like you're going through something and I'd like to be there for you. Do you feel like you could talk? And if not, that's okay, but I'm here for you whenever you're ready. I just want you to know that. And I think for a lot of people going through some of the issues that were the topics for today, it's that feeling alone, isolated, embarrassed, stigmatized, isolated. Did I say that already? That just knowing that kids, siblings or students are reaching out to them and identifying that it matters to you, that they may be having a hard time, just really goes a long way.
Thank you so much. How about over here?
I have a question for the sexuality and gender issues. So I am part of my school's GSA, and I'm the secretary and treasurer, and we've been having a lot of issues with people not wanting to come to our group because they don't want to be seen as gay or have gender issues. And there might not be any specific answer, but we just want some tips to be more open to have more people come in. You don't have to be gay, you don't have to be trans or non-binary to be part of our group. I'm not gay in any way, I'm cis, I am with a male, but
I think to answer your question, and I know we're trying to get to everybody, I think we've heard this before, which is be able to go back, and the first step was coming here today, and sort of use some of what we talked about here today to go out and help recruit, have these conversations. As the doctor mentioned, hey, I was at this conference and this came up, and hopefully open dialogue, and hopefully from there your recruitment will pick up.
I would also like other students to answer the question as well.
Awesome.
So you want to know how you can get people in there that are exactly gay and stuff, correct? And like how people want to come and help, but like, yeah? All right. So, funny thing, I'm transgender, so I am running the club. And then my co-president, who's back there, or somewhere, I don't know, hi Miranda, she's straight. So everyone who comes up to her, they basically go, so you like run the GSA, right? So like, you must like obviously be gay. And it's like,
I get those
oh,
comments
no.
every single day.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we kind of present is that we put it out there that when we do like little tables and stuff outside our cafeteria, we always go and we always like preach, like, you don't have to be gay. Like, to be a part of this, you don't have to be LGBT. You can be an ally to anyone for this. Like, you can just stand up and be like, well, I believe that this person deserves rights and like happiness, so I'm gonna stand up for them and help them out and like, you know, go along with them and like march by their side and be like, yeah, that guy likes a dude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can we take this last one, Doc? I'm sorry. I'm going to say, go ahead. Quick question.
I run the GSA at LHS, which is Londonderry. We we did like we're talking about an ally week where we just kind of like sit in the cafe and we're like, okay, hey, you can sign this piece of paper and just be like an ally. So like it's out there that you don't have to be gay to be in GSA. We have about 40 members and it's great. I love it, and like 35 come consistently and I love it. It's pretty successful too. We've done amazing with it. So if you have any questions, find me if you really feel like it. And then,
can I say something? I just want to say that from just listening to you guys, like this wasn't my topic at all. I wasn't involved in this, but listening to you guys, I just learned right now that basically I didn't know what to say at that time, but honestly, every single person matters. So honestly, it's not about specifically who you are, but it's about issues that are important to you, that you want other people's opinions, and so just including everyone together. So I didn't really know what to say, but now I feel like just try to include everyone. And if someone asks you a question about who you are, be straight up, say who you are, be confident with who you are, because you're important, and you should have everybody know who you are because you are important, every single one of you.
How awesome is that? All right, so a quick question, very quick.
Okay, so
Quick.
my question is like coming out, like how do you go about it without it being like cliche and stuff? Because I know that a lot of kids have trouble coming out, only because they're worried about it, and like how do you make them feel supported and like things like that? Sorry to make you come back.
Before we get an awesome answer, this is literally, John,
I promise.
the end.
The end.
Just be there for them.
Okay.
That is literally the biggest thing you can do, is literally be there for who your friend is. Because as long as you are there for them, let it be just friend. Friend, family, anything. I don't know, dog. Like, just be there for them. That's the biggest thing you can do. Stand by their side. Just be like, yeah, my friend's gay. My friend's bi. My friend's trans. My friend's non-binary. Just as long as you support them and you go by pronouns, name, everything that they want, it's their best. And even like, you know, if you mess up, like, oh, wrong name, as long as you correct yourself, like, that is the biggest thing you can do, is like, just be there and like stand up and just be there for them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.